Instructional design is a wonderful career, and in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to become an instructional designer, even if you don't have a master's degree or any formal instructional design experience. So for those of you who don't already know who I am Devlin Peck. I'm a freelance e-learning designer and developer, but I also spend a lot of my time working on content like this and helping other instructional designers land great opportunities in this space. So this video is all about how to become an instructional designer, but I also have tons of other resources and videos about these topics that dive more in depth. So I'll link those resources in the description below, and I'll add cards in the top right of the screen as these topics come up in the video. So now, just before we dive into the step-by-step guide, let's consider why someone might want to become an instructional designer. So like I said, it is a great career, and part of the reason for this is because instructional designers are well compensated. In the United States, this average salary is usually between 75 and 80K, depending on the surveys that you look at. And most of the entry-level corporate positions are between 60 and 65 grand. So really solid earning potential in this field. Most freelancers I know are making well into six figures. So yeah, great opportunities. A lot of these jobs are remote. If you're a freelancer, it's kind of remote by default. And then the full-time jobs, especially with COVID-19, a lot of them are moving remote. There are also tons of opportunities in this space. Again, especially after COVID-19 and this global pandemic, so much of this training and these workshops and these classroom experiences, all of that is getting moved online, and a lot of it is getting moved into a self-paced format. So if you can design e-learning well and you can chunk that information down into a more digestible format, then there is a huge demand for that skill set right now. Another great perk of this career is that you'll have a good work-life balance. Of course, there will be exceptions to this, and it will depend on your work environment. You know, some IDs do get a bit overworked, I'm sure, but I'd say 99% of the cases and 99% of the people I've talked to, you show up at the start of the day, or you sign in, you get the job done, and then once 5 o'clock rolls around, you're off the clock. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to stress about what's going on at work. So I know this is a very big selling point for people coming from high stress careers like teaching, where you're like always on. Instructional design is not like that. It's a 9 to 5 if you're working full time, and as long as you're keeping up with the workload, then you're good. You don't got to worry about it after your day's over. And finally, instructional design work can be rewarding. This will depend on the company you're at and the position you're in, but instead of teaching to a classroom of 20 students, like the projects you're working on as an instructional designer, those can be rolled out to tens or hundreds of thousands of people. So it's very scalable. So if it's designed well and it's actually designed to help people do their jobs better, or, feel more satisfied with their lives and their work, then you could possibly get a lot of satisfaction out of that. Okay, so now we're going to dive into the actual steps to becoming an instructional designer. I tried to break this down into 4 main pieces, and again, I have a longer written guide into all of this, so I'll link that below. But let's take a closer look at these pieces. So the first step is to learn more about the theory, the models, and the principles that guide an instructional designer. So the first one we're going to talk about is ADDIE. So ADDIE is an acronym. It stands for 5 different phases, you can think of them as, of instructional design work. So this really will help you get a feel for what an instructional designer does. And really quickly, that it stands for analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. So read up on ADDIE, learn about the tasks associated with each step, because those are all tasks that an instructional designer may be expected to do. Most of your tasks will follow those 2 Ds right there, design and development, but it will be good to get a full understanding of this process and use these tasks to guide your own process when you're thinking through these instructional design projects. Think about how you're conducting analysis, how you're conducting evaluation, and then how you're designing and developing the experience itself. So definitely do your due diligence with Addy. This is a very common topic in interviews, and it's something you want to be able to speak intelligently about. Gagne's 9 events. This is Robert Gagne. This is an older theorist. This is popular decades ago, but it still holds true. It deals with these 9 instructional events that make up a good instructional intervention. So it's based on science, but since they're laid out so well, like gain attention, stimulate recall, present content, just look into these 9 events. They are very clear, and you can use it to outline a learning experience. So yeah, I would suggest learning what each of those 9 events are, and then trying to just outline a little sample learning experience where you would satisfy each one of those 9 events, and then you can see how if you were to facilitate that learning experience, it would make for a really wholesome experience overall, just because you're hitting on all of these key elements that Gagne proposes with these 9 events. So look into this, try to get some hands-on practice with it. If you're a newer instructional designer, this is a really good approach to use to designing your first couple of learning experiences. All right, Action Mapping by Kathy Moore. This is one of my favorites. I really recommend that you learn more about the action mapping process. This is more about how to design training for the business world. So instead of designing content and teaching people what they need to know, instead you're helping people practice what it is that they need to do on the job to produce results for that organization. So learn this process. This is the process I use on a lot of my freelance projects, and the conversations I have with my clients because of action mapping. It really helps me differentiate myself from my peers and charge more, because our focus is on producing results instead of on just presenting content. So it really changes the conversation, and it really makes an impact all across the board, and the results it produces, how engaging it is for the people taking the training, and on and on. So learn that process, and just to get a little bit of hands-on practice, I would suggest creating an action map in line with this process, just to get some experience with it and feel a bit more comfortable with this concept overall. If you have the time and you want to make a bit of an investment, I'll link the book Map It by Kathy Moore below. This is where she really presents this process. It's a really engaging read, and it highlights a lot about our industry. So I definitely recommend reading that book if you have not already. All right. So Kirkpatrick's model of evaluation. These are different levels of evaluation that you would perform to determine how effective a particular learning or instructional intervention is. So I would definitely suggest learning each level. So there's level 1, 2, 3, and 4. They get more expensive and comprehensive as you go up those levels. Most instructional designers and instructional design teams are just doing levels 1 and 2, which is measuring the reaction, how do people like this learning experience, and measuring the learning effectiveness. So are people performing well on this assessment? Is it clear that they're learning from something from when they started this to when they finished it? So practice applying levels 1 and 2 on your own project. That will probably just consist of a well-crafted survey to hit that first level, and a well-crafted assessment or final quiz to determine if they learned something during the experience. So look more into this. This is another common interview topic, and whenever you talk about evaluation, bringing up Kirkpatrick's is a really safe bet. Bloom's taxonomy. So Bloom's is used to craft learning objectives most often. So I would look into it more. It's like a nice pyramid. It talks about the higher levels of objectives to measure these higher levels of learning. When you first start writing these learning objectives, almost always you'll have Bloom's open in another window to get your action verbs and to think about what you really want people to be able to do by the end of a learning experience. A lot of this is more information focused, like identifying, recalling, explaining. So lately I do prefer using an action map instead of Bloom's taxonomy. I think of an action map as like the most concrete version of Bloom's, but Again, the main takeaway here is learn how to craft measurable learning objectives. Use Bloom's taxonomy to guide you. This is a very important foundational instructional design skill. All right, Mayer's principles of multimedia learning. I use these to guide so many decisions when I'm creating e-learning. So these 12 principles, they're research backed, and it's like the do's and don'ts of multimedia learning. So look into them. I think there are 12 of them. Some of them are more relevant to e-learning design and development than others, but definitely study them and use them to guide your projects. In so many beginner projects, I see some of these core principles get violated. These are research-backed principles. This is the kind of stuff you want to talk about when you talk about how you make your design decisions. And learning these principles, this will bring you a step closer to being a subject matter expert in the science of e-learning design and development. So definitely look into these. There's an entire book on this too. I think it's E-Learning and the Science of Instruction. So if you want to dive even deeper, again, I'll link that book in the description. All right, another very important one, visual design principles. So there are 4 main principles: contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. These are very important. These applying these principles will make not only your e-learning projects, but also your website, your print documents, just everything you design, it will make it look much more polished and professional, which immediately makes it more appealing, not just to the people who will be consuming this training or these documents, but also your employers or potential clients. So I think, applying these design principles and having my work just look a little bit more professional, I think that has helped me more than almost anything else in helping me land opportunities. So don't skip this piece. This is worth learning very early on and trying to practice applying these principles from day one, and you'll get better and better as you go. So good stuff. So that covers the main theory, models, and principles you need to know. Most of those things will come up in interviews. You'll see conversations about them on LinkedIn, and some of those things like the multimedia principles for learning and the visual design principles, those are things you'll just want to apply to your projects so that they are more effective and engaging and just immediately more professional. So next up, we're going to dive into what technology you need to learn to actually build these learning experiences and make yourself more employable. So let's talk about the tech. So the main one, which you've probably come across by now, is Articulate Storyline. This is, at least right now, and since I've gotten into the field several years ago, Articulate Storyline has been the most popular e-learning authoring tool. It's very easy to use. If you've used PowerPoint, it's almost the same thing with a few added features. So you'll feel very at home if you're good with PowerPoint. You'll just need to put in that extra effort to learn more about triggers, variables, and conditions, layers, and states. So it's just some extra features so that you can make like interactive slide-based experiences that don't require a facilitator guiding you through them. Instead, it's just it's something that people can do on their own. So it's self-paced. So I recommend starting your free trial and start building some of these interactive e-learning interactions. Sorry for being redundant, but just get that trial and start building things. Start using triggers, start using variables and conditions. Just learn this tool because this is going to be a very important tool for you on the job, especially if you're looking to work in the corporate space or the freelance space. Articulate Rise is also in that Articulate 360 suite. This one is very, very easy to use. It's just a cloud-based authoring tool. So you pick, do you want to include a text box or an image or these pre-built interactions, and then you just swap out the images and swap out the text. So it's very fast to use. It's easy to use. The end product isn't slide-based. Instead, it's like a mobile responsive, like little mini website almost. So look into this, build a sample course just to get some experience with it, familiarize yourself with this tool, just so that you can say that you're familiar with it in an interview or maybe create a portfolio project with it, because this tool is gaining popularity and demonstrating some expertise with it will only help you. So again, you can learn this in probably an afternoon or a day. You don't need to spend a ton of time on Rise. Adobe Illustrator. So I use Illustrator the most out of the whole Adobe suite. I use this to modify vector graphics, to change their colors, make them bigger and smaller, and then include these nice illustrated graphics in my e-learning courses. So I would recommend picking up Illustrator, learning the basics, and then using that to take these vector graphics and add them to your e-learning projects like I was describing. There are competitor tools like there's Affinity Designer, I believe, and it can do the same type of thing. Just the main takeaway here is you want to be comfortable editing vector graphics. All right, Adobe XD. This is a tool that you can use to create prototypes, but how a lot of more advanced e-learning designers and developers use this tool is to create visual mock-ups for your slides before actually building them in a tool like Storyline. And the reason for this is because Adobe XD is a very lightweight tool. It's really easy to build your slides, change things, and then start over from scratch again. So it makes sense to make sure that your slide is designed exactly how you want it in Adobe XD and, get rid of it and just keep iterating and keep working on it until it looks perfect or really professional. And then once that looks good, that's when you would start exporting things and building and mirroring that in Articulate Storyline. Because Storyline is a bit clunkier. It's not designed for this rapid prototyping like Adobe XD is. So pick up this tool, incorporate it into your workflow, and if you can show off your skill with this and talk about this in interviews, I think it will really help you set yourself apart from other instructional designers. And also it will make your designs look more polished and professional just due to the very nature of the iteration and not accepting your first design, but improving upon it in a tool like Adobe XD so that it looks really good before actually building the course. This will make a world of difference, trust me. All right. Learning management systems. Some full-time instructional designers have to work with learning management systems or LMSs. You don't need to do anything crazy with these. I would suggest starting a free trial with, Talent LMS. They have a nice free trial. And all I would suggest that you do is add an e-learning course, which would be a SCORM package. That is how you would publish. Like when you're publishing from Articulate Storyline, you would publish as a SCORM package, and that's what you would upload to the learning management system. So I would suggest just get familiar with uploading a course in that way and enrolling a user in that course. Those, it's really basic functionality, but just do these tasks so that when you're in an interview and someone asks if you're comfortable with an LMS, it'll be an easy yes, and you'll know kind of what it is that you're saying you can do. Okay, so those are the main tech pieces you need to learn. The biggest ones here I would say the biggest one is definitely Articulate Storyline. Start practicing with that tool as soon as possible. And the second most useful one for me has been Adobe Illustrator. So if you're just going to do three, do Storyline, Illustrator, and XD. Those three are super helpful and will make you a really strong developer. So next up, we're talking about how you can establish your presence in this industry as an instructional designer. And this is important, okay? An instructional designer with a presence is going to win out over an instructional designer without a presence in a lot of interviews and freelance opportunities. So the first and most important step, this right here is the most important step of this entire process. You need to build a portfolio, okay? It's one thing to learn all of these tools, but you need to actually show off that you can use these tools and use this theory to create a good learning experience, because that's how you're going to get hired, right? So your portfolio, this is going to be a website, just your first name, your last name.com, and you're going to want to direct people to this website. It's going to feature anywhere between 1 and 3 or more projects. And this is where employers, potential clients, and other people in the field will go to see the type of work that you're doing and what you're capable of. So if you have a well-designed portfolio and you have a few projects up that show off what you can do, you're not going to have any problem getting interviews, okay? And once you get into that interview, if that hiring manager saw your portfolio and they liked your work, that just changes the tone 100% because they already like what they can do. They've seen what you can do, and they'll usually tell you that they like your work. So it really changes the tone when you're going into that interview and you know that they already like what it is that you're doing and they want you to do that kind of work for their organization. So yeah, this is the main takeaway. Again, I have a lot of other content about how to do this, but this is a very important piece of becoming an instructional designer, especially in the corporate and freelance space. So once you have that portfolio ready, and you can swap the order around on this a little bit, but you want to start optimizing your LinkedIn profile. So instructional designers, hiring managers, and recruiters are all very active on LinkedIn, probably more so than any other social network. So you want to optimize your profile so that it's easy for these people to find you. Okay, so you want to use the right keywords, you want to tell your story, you want to show off your experiences and awards, maybe get some recommendations from coworkers or peers or supervisors. But you really want that profile in good shape. And at the very top of that LinkedIn profile, you would direct people to your portfolio. So, I'm Devlin Peck. The best way to learn more about me is at devlinpeck.com. That would be right at the top of my LinkedIn profile because you want people to go to your LinkedIn, and then from there, you want them to go to your portfolio site to see the work that you can do and to maybe then take that next step and reach out to you about a potential job or a potential project. So finally, once you have those things in place, your LinkedIn is very tailored to ID and you have a strong portfolio site, it's time to start networking, getting your name out there so that people will come across your site and your work. So a good way to do this is to attend live events, engage in the chat. Live events in this space are really nice because they are kind of lively. People are going there to connect and to network with people. So don't miss out on those experiences. Posting and commenting on LinkedIn is also really popular. Just posting about being transparent, showing off your projects, sharing any realizations or tips you learned with the rest of the community. That stuff goes a long way in this space. And then finally, if you come across someone and you really like their work, or you've they have a role that you're really interested in, feel free to just reach out to them, introduce yourself, and ask if they have time to answer a few questions over the chat or something like that. Don't try to sell people or say, oh, hey, do you have a job for me? That's not going to resonate well with people. But if you're just interested in learning more about what they do, odds are that they're probably willing to share and to help you out how they can. All right, so if you've made it this far and you've done all of these steps, then you're probably at a point where you're landing interviews fairly often, right? If you have a good portfolio, you're going to land interviews. So the next step is actually preparing for that interview and making sure that you can ace it and get the offer or get the job. So first things first, you want to make sure that your resume is updated. If you already optimized your LinkedIn profile, then you can probably pull some of the tasks from there. But you want to make sure that you're focusing on the instructional design tasks for all of your roles. If you were a customer support agent, did you ever train your peers, or did you educate the customers? Did you design any kind of job aids or infographics? Those are the type of tasks you want to include on here. And keep the resume short and straightforward. I mean, you only need a one-page resume in this space. Highlight as many of those ID tasks you've done as possible. And again, at the very top of your portfolio or at the top of your resume, make sure that your portfolio link is nice and bold, very easy to find, because a lot of hiring managers, that's the first thing they're going to look for when they come across the resume is, where's the portfolio link? How can I actually start seeing some of their work? So again, resume, think of this like the LinkedIn profile. Think of your resume as the tool to get people to that portfolio site, because that's what's going to do the majority of the heavy lifting for you. And then finally, you want to prepare for that interview. We can't understate the importance of the interview. Even if your portfolio is great, if you bomb the interview, you're probably not going to get hired. So this is very important too. Some of the most common things you'll need to talk about is your instructional design process, for one. So that's a very common question. Tell me a bit more about your process. What's the process you use? So feel comfortable talking about that. And then also feel comfortable telling the story of why you will make a good instructional designer. So odds are you might be coming from a field like teaching, or another design field, maybe something related to computers like computer science. This is a very, very interdisciplinary field, and I would be very surprised if there was any industry out there or any career out there that you can't pull some things from and use that as evidence of why you would make a good ID. So really dive into that. Think about your story and how you're going to make a hiring manager confident that your background will help you do this job really well. And that is all I have for you. I hope that this was helpful. Again, I'll link a ton of resources in the description to help you along this journey even further. If you do have any specific questions, or if there are any resources that you would like to see, then definitely leave a comment. And please subscribe if you enjoyed this content. There's a ton more to come, and I am very dedicated to helping instructional designers land more and better opportunities. So please subscribe, like the video if this was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.